Hi, and welcome to the podcast where we try to make sense of the complex issue of religion and state in Israel. And today, we'll talk about raising a Jewish voice against racism and for a shared society between Jews and Arabs. For the past 20 years, we've been working to raise a Jewish voice against racism. Our slogan is, racism is not our Judaism, because we believe that all human beings are created in the image of God and therefore deserve equal and respectful treatment. We fight those who use Judaism and Jewish resources to spread hatred, particularly against Arabs, a horrifying yet unfortunately widespread phenomenon. Incitement to racism in Israel is a criminal offense. It's not a protected free speech. This offense can lead up to 5 years in prison. Unfortunately, it is not being enforced, at least against Jewish individuals who incite against Arabs. In 2022, we published a report on the selective enforcement of the offenses of incitement. We revealed that between 2014 and 2019, 77% of all indictments for incitement were against Arabs. One of the most egregious cases of religiously motivated incitement is that of Ben-Zion Gopstein, leader of the racist organization Lehava. Under the guise of opposing assimilation, this group engages in violence against Arabs. We conducted a long legal battle against this group and its leader, and finally he was being indicted. He was indicted in 2019, and recently Gopstein, the head of the organization, was convicted of incitement to terror, but unfortunately received only a light sentence of community service, failing to reflect the severity of his actions. And we are, of course, going to continue to follow his dangerous actions. Some Jewish religious leaders who incite against Arabs are state employees, rabbis employed by the state, and this means that we can demand that they undergo disciplinary proceedings for failing to treat all members of public with respect. One of the prominent examples of such cases is Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu, the city rabbi of Safed, who is using his official position as a city rabbi for decades to spread hatred against Arabs. We demanded that he undergo disciplinary charges, and indeed the Supreme Court accepted our petition and over 4 years ago demanded that disciplinary proceedings be initiated against him. He was indeed under disciplinary proceedings just this year. Unfortunately, he is still in his position of city rabbi of Safed. However, his attempt to try to run for chief rabbi of Israel failed, as we insisted that the court ruling, the Supreme Court that says that he does incite against Arabs, this ruling would be presented to the members of the election committee. It was presented, and he was not elected chief rabbi of Israel. During this time, we see that racism has become normalized at the very high levels of government. We have to remember that back in the 1980s, when Rabbi Meir Kahana was elected to the Israel parliament, all other members of Knesset, all 119 Knesset members, condemned him and boycotted him. And in response to his being elected, the law was amended to criminalize racist incitement and to allow disqualification of candidates who engage in incitement to racism. However, since 1992, no candidate was disqualified on the basis of incitement to racism until 2019, when we successfully petitioned to bar 3 candidates from the racist Otzma Yehudit party from running to the Knesset. And indeed, the Supreme Court accepted our petition and disqualified Gopstein, who we mentioned earlier, Baruch Marzel and Michael Ben-Ari for their racist incitement. Unfortunately, a 4th candidate that we asked to disqualify, Itamar Ben-Gvir, was not disqualified by the court, and I think this was a grave mistake, and we see the results of this mistake up until now. It's important to note that the Supreme Court ruling in that case emphasized that racism is fundamentally opposed to the core values upon which the state of Israel was founded. As Jews, we have a special obligation to fight it without compromise. And the court also mentioned that the Hebrew tradition considers human dignity, the belief that all people are created in the divine image, and the pursuit of peace among individuals as supreme values, and that the degradation of human dignity is considered in Judaism a severe offense. One of the troubling trends that we have seen since October 7th, the terrible massacre and the subsequent war, is a sharp increase in racism. At the end of October of 2023, the Israeli Reform Movement published a public statement condemning incidents of racism. And our Racism Crisis Center that we have been operating since 2017 received in 2024 over 400 complaints, almost all of them from Palestinian citizens of Israel. Cases included, for instance, a woman who was denied service from a rental car agency just because the company rented cars only to Jews, or an Arab passenger who was barred from boarding a bus just because he was Arab. But beyond fighting racism, it is crucial to present a counter-vision, one of a shared society between Jews and Arabs. The Reform movement has long operated a program called Neighbors, which fosters connections between Reform Jewish communities and nearby Arab communities in order to break down barriers and build relationships. Over the past year, we have expanded these efforts, encouraging more Reform congregations to engage in this important issue. In the face of government-backed racism, it is essential to offer Israeli society an alternative vision, not a vision of endless conflict and hatred, but one of cooperation, respect, and mutual tolerance. So last year, on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in March, we held a powerful and moving conference on shared society at the Liobek Center in Haifa. On Jerusalem Day, we joined a human rights and tolerance march led by Rabbis for Human Rights as a peaceful counterpoint to the aggressive and racist flag march that marches in the Old City in the Muslim Quarter every Jerusalem Day. And during Chanukah, we organized a series of interfaith candle-lighting ceremonies celebrating the light of tolerance. One of the key figures championing shared society is Rabbi Oded Mazor, the rabbi of the Kol HaNeshama congregation, member of the Secretariat of Maram, the Council of Israeli Reform Rabbis, and a teacher at the Israeli Rabbinical Program at the Hebrew Union College, who I have the honor and pleasure to welcome here today. Hi, Oded. Thank you that you're here.
Shalom, Orly.
So let us just start with a few words about yourself. How did you become a Reform rabbi?
I grew up in the Reform movement. My parents met at a convention of the Israeli Reform movement. I was born into it. My father is one of the first Israeli-born, Israeli-raised and ordained Reform rabbis. So I grew up very much in this atmosphere. And when I chose to become a rabbi...
You didn't have a real choice, I understand.
I had a full choice, or at least I tell myself that I did. Well, my sister is also a rabbi, so maybe we didn't fully have a choice. But yes, I chose to stick in the Reform movement. That's my home. That's my spiritual home.
Amazing, and yeah, I must say, quite an unusual story for a Reform rabbi here in Israel, coming really from a tradition of a family of Reform rabbis. And before we talk a little bit about Kol HaNeshama and your work there, I want to ask you about the fact that you're sending your children to a bilingual school, a Hebrew-Arab school in Jerusalem, Yad B'Yad School, which in Israel it's a quite rare phenomenon. And I want you to just say a few words about the special community of this school and this special choice.
So the Yad B'Yad bilingual school in Jerusalem is one of 7 such schools around Israel, and the only one that has from kindergarten to the end of high school. Jewish, Muslim, Christian students who speak Hebrew, who speak Arabic, with Israeli citizenship or without. And that's the place we wanted for our children. And it was even so much more clear during these awful days of war that that's the place for us. That's the haven, an island of hope in Jerusalem. When we bring our children to school every day, it's an act of hope to trust that that's the place for them to grow up with their friends, with their different narratives, and maybe even some different understandings of this reality that we live in, but with insistence of making this place together a better place for us all.
And I'm sure it has not been easy since October 7th. Probably a lot of questions have been arisen.
Yes, it's definitely not easy. It's the first time that the school experienced that a graduate of the school was killed in the war in Gaza as an Israeli soldier.
Wow.
And I'll share also that in the first few weeks after we returned to school, we, the parents, felt the need to add to the school's security and we did shifts at the beginning of school day and at the end of school day.
The parents themselves.
Parents coming and on 3 different spots around the school to stand there and to say good morning to everyone, coming in Hebrew and in Arabic. And it wasn't because we were afraid of Muslim terrorists. We were afraid of extremists of any kind. Who would,
mostly Jewish extremists, I can imagine.
anyone who would come and try to jeopardize the existence of this school and the fact that Jews and Arabs are living together in one school.
Yeah, it's quite unbelievable. I think really when we think of the extremism of the current government, it's clear that for any extremist, the big threat is coexistence and living together, because it does create an alternative to the vision that our government and unfortunately extremists on the other side try to push for. Kol HaNeshama, your congregation, is really one of the most activist reform congregations in Israel, and it has a strong focus on tikkun olam and social justice in general, and specifically on shared society between Jews and Arabs. And as a congregation that is located, a central congregation that is located in Jerusalem, this is something that's very much on your mind. Could you tell us a little bit about your programs around that issue?
So first I'll start with saying that the founding rabbi of the congregation, Rabbi Levi Wyman Kelman, came with this commitment to tikkun olam embedded in him and founded the community on this basis. And for many years, just to illustrate, this was the place where the open house of the LGBTQ community in Jerusalem was founded. A decade and a half ago, when we were all dealing with asylum seekers from Africa, the community, members of the community, promoted projects and working together with the asylum seekers community. And a member of our staff for quite a few years, Brane, who was a refugee from Eritrea, living in Jerusalem with his family. And 6 days a week, he was our housekeeper and taking care of the building. And then on Shabbat, he was a pastor in the Eritrean church. We love him very, very much. And unfortunately, now he's not in Israel, and his family, they moved to Canada because the state of Israel wasn't smart enough to find a way for them to feel here at home. So Kol HaNeshama has been involved in social justice issues for many, many years. Every prayer, every tefillah that we have always ends with a prayer for peace, written by Rabbi Nachman of Breslau. And we added, Rabbi Levi added, a phrase from the Muslim tradition, Allahumma inta salam wa minka salam. God, you are peace, and from you is peace. And it's in our prayer books, and it's hanging on our wall, and we recite it, and it's part of educating ourselves to remember that our commitment to peace is not only for peace for us or peace amongst us, it's for peace in this land and in this world between people who sometimes feel hostile or hostility between them. In the past long year since the war broke, we did not put this aside. It's been part of who we are, and now we need it ever more. And during this time, we also started a project, a group of members of Kol HaNeshama started a project of Language Cafe, where Jews, mainly from Kol HaNeshama, and Palestinians from different communities and neighborhoods in Jerusalem come together to Kol HaNeshama and practice Hebrew and Arabic and English together. And that's the reason for being together, but that opens up so many more doors to personal relations, knowing each other, understanding each other a bit better.
Yes, completely. And I mentioned before that during Hanukkah we held events, interfaith candlelighting events, and the main event was at Kol HaNeshama. And we had representatives of a few Reform congregations from across the country tell about those meetings with their Palestinian counterparts. And what struck me was that people were not trying to sell illusions or to say that everything is amazing, but actually were very candid about the difficulties that arose to continue meet after October 7th and the challenges that they faced, but that nevertheless they weren't willing to give up, but rather to continue to push for a different future, really to take our future in our hands and to try to bring about a different reality. And I think really doing those, engaging in those programs could really make a difference, first for the congregation and then maybe to a wider crowd. What do you say to people that after October 7th are saying, well, it's sort of naive of you to think that here in the Middle East, in the jungle of the Middle East, things could be different. Maybe people might say we have to defend ourselves. We see that there are cruelty around us. And maybe, that's not the way to go forward.
So we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect life. That's for sure. And just as any parent will start with defending the lives of his own or her own children, we as a nation might, first of all, take care of the lives of our wider family. But that doesn't mean that for protecting ourselves, we're allowed to ruin the lives of others just because they are others and outside of our wider family. Yes, I don't take naive as a complaint. That's what we are as religious people. As Jews, we start our day with being thankful and grateful and appreciative of creation. And then in the Tfilat Amidah, we have a list of requests from God. We want wisdom, and we want rain, and we want equality and justice. And we conclude Tfilat Amidah 3 times a day, the whole year long, with demanding peace, asking for peace. That might be naivety, but we want that naivety to be who we are. We can imagine and work towards making this our reality. If we give up to reality as it is, there is no future. I have to believe that it's possible.
And no faith, maybe.
And yeah, we won't be here. There won't be anyone to tell the story to the next generation if we don't believe that it can be done here in our world. We're not imagining a different world. We know how hard it is. We know that bringing people together when they have sometimes a conflict of narratives, bringing their own pain, that's the ground to work on. If everything was peaceful and easy, we wouldn't need to pray for peace 3 times a day. But it's hard work. But that's our commitment. That's our commandment.
And, you mentioned, the prayers and, of course, the faith that we should take into this naive option of trying to make the world better. But unfortunately, we see definitely in our region, but really worldwide, that religion often serves as a divisive force, not only a force that could bring people together. We see it especially today when the major Jewish voice that we hear from the government is a very divisive voice. How can we transform religion into a unifying force? How could we tell Israelis we should take religion and actually try to bring us together rather than pull us apart?
Problem is not with the religion in itself. The problem is with us human beings. We have that in us, that we sometimes seek war. We want to be strong. We want to take care of our own and what the hell with the others. And the platform of religion is very helpful for this sometimes, because if you claim that this is what God told you, and now that you have God's power with you, you can go forward with it no matter what. It's a very strong tool to use. We have, I think, to insist on offering and using religion in a different way. I think today, the fact that religions are going in that direction is a problem with humanity, not with God. We need to work on that in ourselves. We need to form the opportunities for religious leaders to come and say, listen, we have this, you do it in a different way. We might use different prayers, different languages, different traditions, but we're looking forward for something which is quite similar for us all. And one of the moments of realization of that for me was when I was traveling in Africa post my army service years ago. I came to a border crossing when I had to fill up my name and my passport number, and I was also asked to fill in what's my tribe. And I wrote...
What's your tribe, Oded?
Well, there at least I wrote that I'm from the tribe of Judah. But what that led me to understanding for myself that it's not about truth. We're not talking about truth as in science. This is my tribe. This is my big family. This is how we do things. This is how we celebrate our relationship with the divine and values in our lives. But what the other tribe has to offer is not less of true. It's their way of living the same truth, or maybe a different version of truth, but there's no reason for hatred. We can sit together around the campfire and share our stories, how the world was created, and what songs we sing to the divine, and work together to fulfill these values in our world. That should be the role of religions if religious leaders, if people of faith will come together to show that it's possible.
And it struck me that you said you're a member of the tribe of Judea and not the tribe of humanity, because you're saying we shouldn't ignore the fact that we have different circles of belonging, right? It's okay, we are part of a few circles. It does not mean that we have to be enemies of each other, but we have to recognize that we have different circles to which we belong, and that's okay. We don't have to say that everybody is the same. We are different, but we have to take advantage of our differences to actually bring us together. And like you say it from or on the basis of religion, on the basis of Judaism. So we're not throwing it away, but rather telling Israelis and the world, we are using our resources in order to bring us together. But we have to remember that if you look at the Jewish resources, you can find a lot of terrible things, right? I mean, you can find a lot of resources telling about, Jewish supremacy and horrible things against non-Jewish, but also, love thy neighbor as yourself, and you should love, the stranger 36 times is mentioned in the Torah. So we have all of those, right? So how do you reconcile those?
Our sources are creative writings of humans. People wrote it, and all the interpretations for sure are human, and humans put into these texts their feelings. And some of our greatest rabbis were people of love and bringing people together, and some people who are our greatest leaders were not, and felt, maybe because of their own biographies, felt hatred to the others. Now it's up to us. Now this story that we pass from generation to generation, it's in our hands. What will be the next chapter? What will be the chapter written in this Jewish democratic independent state of Israel? What's the Judaism that will rise from this Zion as it is? If we only commit ourselves to generations of heritage, when in most of these centuries, Jews were living as a minority under another religion, what can we bring out from it? Again, up to us. We're writing a new chapter now, and it's in our hands. And just a week ago, we were reading the Torah portion of Yitro, and it's a very big question why the Torah, the 10 Commandments, were given in the Torah portion that's named after a person, and when that person is not from within the people of Israel. And we had a conversation about it in our synagogue around our Torah reading that Shabbat morning. And I wouldn't say conclusion, but one of the options that we came up with and that I choose to take with me, at least this year, is that after the Israelites saw that the other is the Egyptians, is Pharaoh, and then at the end of the Torah portion of Beshalach, after they got rid of the Egyptians, Amalek comes. So maybe that means that all those who are not from within the Israelites are the enemy? No, they have to meet Yitro. They have to personally meet a person who is not from within the people of Israel, who comes from the outside and is wise and is loving and is able to cherish who they are and celebrate with them their freedom. And now that they saw a person of another religion, of another tribe, who's close to them and brings them back to being part of humanity, now they're able to receive the Torah.
Amazing. And you spoke about really seeing people from other religions, and I want to ask you, we have religious partners in the fight against racism, both within our Jewish community, but also through different interfaith collaborations. Can you share with us some of your work with other people within Judaism and also from other religions, interfaith dialogue or work that you do?
So I want to start with something that happened in Jerusalem in this 14, 16 months that we're in this war. A cooperation that wasn't there for many, many years between different synagogues of different denominations in the small neighborhood that we are, Baka, Katamon, Talpiot area, liberal, Orthodox, conservative, reform communities who come together realizing that if we don't find a way to demand and insist on what we believe in, for the sake of Jerusalem, for the sake of Israel, for the sake of humanity, we will lose it, all of us. And so we've been meeting regularly to protest for the return of the hostages, for finding the way to bring back the peace that we hope for this region. We're not there, but we're able to call for it together because we're at one in it. Cooperation with other religious leaders, well, I'll start by saying that in Jerusalem, it's complicated.
Everything is complicated in Jerusalem.
Everything in Jerusalem is complicated because some of the Palestinians in Jerusalem are with Israeli citizenship and some of them without, etc., etc. But just 2 weeks ago, you mentioned before that I'm part of the Secretariat of the Reform Rabbis Council, Maram. We had a seminar of 2 days up in the north, in the Galilee, and we met with religious leaders, Muslim and Christian, and it was very clear that we have people to work with. We have people who know how problematic the situation is, and that if we don't work together and find the words, and sometimes it's the melodies, not even the words. Sometimes it's being able to sit together for coffee and not talking too much.
Just being together.
Being together. There are people to work with. Sometimes we need to do it a bit more, not at every street corner, but when we do it outside, when we marched together in Jerusalem, in the streets of Jerusalem, it was very powerful. We were showing people around us that there is an alternative for this place.
So on this note, let me end by asking you, are you optimistic? Looking to the future.
I was taught that being optimistic is about believing that things will be okay somehow. So I'm not optimistic. I'm not sitting and waiting for things to be better. I'm actively hopeful. I'm very actively, very hopeful.
Well, I want to end with mentioning, you just mentioned the march in the summer, the Interfaith March for Human Rights and Peace in the summer, and you delivered there a very powerful and moving speech. You started by quoting a poem by Daniel Baumgarten, which goes like that. On the day after the terror attack, the vegetables remained in perfect order at the Arab grocery store. We didn't say a thing, but our eyes met in silent acknowledgement. We are citizens of a country yet to be formed. And then you went on to say, we are the sons and daughters of this land, believers in different religions. Each has a long and glorious history, yet painful and incomplete when on its own. From this city, Jerusalem, El-Quds, a great call for peace must emerge, a call that stems from the meeting of gazes and the ability to acknowledge mistakes, acknowledge pain, to acknowledge the difficult duty that is our fate, to teach ourselves, all of us, the commandments of life, peace, freedom, and repair. We are citizens of the country we will rebuild, the land that will rise from the ruins. I want to thank you, Oded, for coming here and for your courageous and unwavering voice against racism and for a shared society, a voice that we need now more than ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening to us. We'll see you in the next episodes.